Morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Kamal. I appreciate the intro. Just a little bit more about me. As Kamal mentioned, I'm VP Product in our hotels business unit at Tripadvisor. Been there for 5 years, working to transform our customers' perception of Tripadvisor to be more than just a research site. Prior to that, though, I spent majority of my career in startups in a number of different functions, ranging from engineer to entrepreneur, did some work in marketing, and finally kind of landed in Tripadvisor. So it took a winding road to get to product management and a winding road through a number of different industries to get to travel. A little bit more about Tripadvisor. I'm sure many, if not all of you, are aware of the brand. The world's largest travel site. Been in business for 18 years, founded in the year 2000 above a pizza shop in Needham. And much like myself, they haven't moved very far. They're just right across the street in a brand new building, also in Needham. 450 plus million monthly active users. So with that size and scale comes tremendous impact on the entire travel industry spend. Research done recently has shown that Tripadvisor impacts or influences about 10% of global travel spend. So what that means is about 450 billion-ish dollars may not take place, those transactions may not take place on the Tripadvisor site, but they start with Tripadvisor, they read a review, they see a rating, they're influenced in that travel decision, that purchase decision by going to Tripadvisor. So tremendous size, tremendous scale, still very much a startup at its roots, however. So I wanted to kick off this 2 days a little bit with some inspiration from a different industry. So here's a quote around customer and customer experience that's been attributed to Jeff Bezos over at Amazon. And what this quote really reminds us is that despite all of the distractions and the external factors that we may see from competitors or other stakeholders, what Jeff's trying to remind his employees with this statement is stay laser focused on the needs, wants, and desires of customers, and if we are delivering real value to customers, everything else will be all right. And that really felt like, to me, a great way to summarize what we're all here to talk about over the next couple of days. And if the existence proof of Amazon's strength and dominance in the industry is not enough to support that statement, there's some numbers that I can share from work that we did with McKinsey, or we leveraged from McKinsey, I should say, to show the real dollar impact that comes with creating a truly best-in-class customer experience. And it really manifests itself in two ways. When McKinsey surveyed the data and it showed that customers who did business with businesses that they themselves labeled as best-in-class experience, they're going to spend twice as much more, and those companies are going to grow twice as much more. The other side of the coin, which is also equally exciting, is those companies are going to spend about 20% less in costs related to customer service to keep those relationships ongoing throughout the lifetime of that relationship. And so customer experience, in my mind, really equates to generating an affinity for the brand, an affinity for the product or service that lasts over a long period of time and costs less money to keep that relationship active. So how do we do this kind of stuff at Tripadvisor? It begins with the mission. And this was the mission that Steve Kaufer, our founder and CEO, created and wrote down when he was working above a pizza shop 18 years ago. We are going to help travelers unleash the maximum potential, full potential of every trip they take. That's why the business exists. That's why the people who go to that business go to work every day. That is the rallying cry around all of the activities. We're going to do that in 3 different ways. We're going to help people know better. This is the part that I'm sure everyone is intimately familiar with in terms of reading ratings and reviews. We're going to help people book better. We've connected to the booking sites and the booking engines that exist all across the world to gather prices and help people understand they're getting the best value for the money they're spending. We're going to help people go better. When they're on their trip, We're going to use our mobile technology and our mobile platform to help them find places to eat, experiences to have, that are going to create memories that will lock in that full potential of the trip. And so this is kind of that mantra that every new employee sees on day one. The executive team walks you through this on day one and sets the stage for the work that you're going to do. But mission statements quickly lose their punch. And so the part that I think Tripadvisor has needed to do, especially in the past couple of years, to help ensure that that mission is truly infused in everything that we do, is to do a lot of work to plan in a set of conditions that are of extreme uncertainty. So Tripadvisor may have the scale now, but it is still very much a startup at heart in an industry and online travel space that is changing and evolving tremendously. We saw some of the innovation that Hilton is producing just a few minutes ago. And so keeping that mission in the forefront from a strategic core perspective, building that into the business units through a yearly planning cycle, and then building that into quarterly roadmaps and quarterly activities is vital. So that that connective tissue of where we're going, why it's important, and what we're doing is felt up and down the org chain. And so we use a couple of techniques. There are many techniques to use. We use a couple. One is called the OGSP framework. First acronym of the day, I think. Hopefully one of the last. It's really a strategy plan on a page. So taking that mission statement, which is a long-term statement, and writing down what are we going to do this year across each of the business units, whether it be hotel, flight, restaurant, attraction, to further that goal. That's the foundation upon which those quarterly roadmaps can be built. OGSP stands for objective, goals, strategies, and plans. What's the top level objective? How are we going to measure that? What are the unique strengths and strategies that this organization can bring to the table in order to achieve those goals? And what are the plans? What are the activities that we need to do? And we connect all of this planning activity with shared KPIs, so that everybody is rowing the boat in the right direction. So I want to show you just a quick example. I can't show you the Tripadvisor OGSP or OKR framework this year, but I can show you this fake example using some superstars from the Silicon Valley as if they were making a football team. It's kind of hard to read, so I'll just walk you through it. So at the top, you've got the general manager. His job is to make money for the owners. That's why most businesses exist, right? To make money. How are they going to do that? Well, he's got to put a good product on the field, so his head coach has to win games and win championships. His head of PR and marketing has to make sure there's butts in seats. And then underneath them, at the team level, you've got defensive coordinators, you've got marketing people, you've got media people who all have a specific goal and objective that they are measuring that helps roll up to that large goal. And so that alignment is vital to ensure that the team and the company, which has now grown to 3,000 people, is moving in the same direction as quickly as possible. So which direction are we going in? So now we have alignment. We all know why we're here and where we're going. What are we going to do next? It's vital that you kind of map out how customers use your brand. So what we've done is map the journey. The traveler journey, going through from left to right a number of different stages, and then at each stage we've identified a few characteristics. This is the execution team or the implementation team's North Star. This is how they know where they need to deploy their capital and their resources to solve pain points. For Tripadvisor, the traveler journey begins with inspiration, moving into planning and purchase. There's a period before the trip actually happens that is important to the traveler journey, moving into getting there and being in destination, and then ending with coming home, sharing out your great memories, and hopefully starting the cycle all over again, from sharing back into inspiration. Within each of those stages, along the left-hand side, you see key characteristics that we've identified through research. Our research team sat with users. They did first primary research as well as secondary research to understand, first, what are the key activities in each stage? What are our customers actually doing? Regardless of what we want them to do, what are they doing? not just on our site or our product, but in general in their life. What is happening around them? What is their mood and emotion? How do they feel? In inspiration, they're probably feeling excited. When they're moving up to that purchase moment, they're feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxiety. What are the jobs to be done at each stage? In order for a customer to move through the traveler journey, they need to solve some problems. They need to get some tasks done. Articulating and writing those down help us understand where we need to provide new features, products, or services. And then finally, second to last is tools. What are they doing? How are they doing it? Are they on Tripadvisor? Are they on a booking site? Are they talking to their friends? What are the resources and tools that they're doing to get their jobs done? And then finally, the most important thing, in my opinion, is what's the pain they're feeling? What's the friction they feel? What's not working great about this part of the journey? That becomes the opportunity to ideate with our product design and engineering teams to introduce new features to actually solve those problems. And this is a part of our Tripadvisor culture that we do really, really well. So if we have all of our plans, we have all of our 3-year plan, 1-year plan, roadmaps, great. We now have identified significant, serious, real pain. Let's start building some stuff to solve that pain. Let's start taking some action to solve that pain. In an ideal, so this chart here shows in an ideal world would start with where we are today, our objective to solve pain, would get there in a straight line. But in reality, we all know that's not how it's going to be. We're going to be close, but no cigar. And so developing a culture and an environment where your teams are independently validating each aspect of their individual roadmaps, if we're talking about that level of the organization, or year-long strategy, if we're talking about that level of the organization, is helpful to course correct and bring activities and direction back to solving real customer pain. And so one of the things I like to, another quote here is, "No business plan survives first contact with customers." Steve Blank is a Silicon Valley guy. He teaches at Stanford now, and we find that to be true at Tripadvisor. We plan with conviction. We do a lot of work and put in a lot of effort to come up with plans that are big, transformative in the industry, and then we turn those plans over to individual teams and we say, validate that all this stuff is true, and use quantitative and qualitative data to do that work. So that takes the form of agile software development. Tripadvisor is a software company. Yes, we work in the travel industry and we're solving customer pain. The way we do that is by producing software that connects demand with supply online, on site and apps. And so at the core of what we do, and the reason why I don't travel all that much is I'm writing code sometimes, I'm writing specs a lot of the times, I'm building product features with my team. The way we do that is agilely. So Agile, I'm sure folks are very familiar with, requires an iterative process for getting new features into customers' hands quickly. We put our new ideas, our minimum viable features or minimum viable products on a small part of our website, 5% of traffic. When you're talking about 450 million users, we have the luxury of saying, hey, 5%, we can get a statistically significant response on just 5 to maybe even 10% of our customer traffic over the period of 7 days. And that enables upwards of 25 plus Agile teams to work autonomously, so think the lower level of that OGSP chart that I showed, all working on their components of the strategy, validating those on the live site. Just a quick example of a Kanban board that I show here of how each individual team is typically organizing their work. They're taking ideas, they're moving them into development, they're getting them onto an A/B test, they're putting them in front of customers as well. We do a tremendous amount of usability studies and other forms of qualitative research where we're getting that voice of the customer into the development process as we go. And again, this helps avoid course corrections. But it doesn't, all those activities don't necessarily help prevent collisions, which is one of the things that the product leadership team started to see was happening quite a bit in the past couple of years as the company scaled up and grew in terms of the number of Agile teams. And we had to institute new forms of transparency into the business. That helps prevent, again, someone saying, hey, you're working on this feature because you learned it from this research that we did to help solve this pain point that was identified in the customer journey. Well, I am too, but I'm doing it a different way, and I'm writing it in a different set of code. So now we have kind of the worst of both worlds, right? So we have two things that are untested, two different directions, and now we have to figure them out. So we instituted a weekly product review process where folks come in and first share plans, upcoming plans, connecting back to their OKRs or their OGSPs, as well as lessons learned on tests and concepts that are completed. That is an all-hands meeting, executive all the way down, and it helps prevent against two different teams working on the same idea. And with all of that in place, that really enables us to move through the customer discovery and validation process very, very quickly. So another way of showing what I've already showed is people come up with ideas get built into software gets tested, we get some learning, some data, some information, and then from that comes insights and learnings that helps us to repeat the process. A lot of the industry is doing that. What Tripadvisor does differently, and I would say is our core strength, is the speed with which we move through that loop, right? So a lot of teams can move through that loop weeks, maybe months. We're running 150 plus slice tests or A/B tests on a weekly basis across all of those teams. So the amount of data and the throughput that we can get helps us go through that process really fast. And our whole culture is about continuing to accelerate learning, not necessarily always having the right answer. Our job is not to be right in the product world, it's to get it right. And so by accelerating our learning and moving through this loop faster, it helps us validate which parts of that vision, which parts of that customer journey need more investment and which part needs less, or we're wrong thesis to begin with. And this process helps increase the odds of deploying a finite set of resources for more impact. So probably the biggest bet that we made as a company was around our move to taking credit cards on the site for hotels. Tripadvisor, known as a media site, a place to go and read reviews. Hypothesis that we had was that we can provide more convenience to users so they don't have to click around. They don't have to leave our site once they found that hotel they want. They can buy it right on the site. Particularly on the mobile device, this was a very compelling value proposition. If you've ever tried to shop a bunch of different websites on your mobile device, it gets really hard depending on the strength of the booking site's sophistication and engineering team. So we moved through this process very quickly, and from an execution process, very successfully. Customers loved it. Conversion rates on our checkout product were high, specifically on mobile. We connected into the sources of supply that we needed to, so 11 of the top 12 global hotel chains on board, both of the main online travel agencies, the two that really, really matter, plus a whole bunch more connected in, as well as 25,000 plus indies, independent hotels, are all on the platform. What we learned is that while the demand that we were able to create and that conversion we were able to create was not sufficient to overcome channel conflict that we had created underneath on the supply side. So those online travel agencies, the Pricelines, the Booking.coms, the Expedia, ultimately would have preferred that people went over to their website so they could create the customer relationship that they wanted to create. They could provide their best in class or their best foot forward from an experience perspective. And so not a success from a strategy perspective, and that's really hard to say, right? This has been my life for a number of years, but I think it gets to the heart and to the core of the culture that we've created where we can move really fast, create big things, create great things. This is rolled out globally. This is on native, it's on mobile, it's on web, it's on tablet, it's on all devices. Customers who see it love it. It's not actually generating the revenues that we want, and so we're going to pivot away from that. and we're going to be proud with the work we did, and we're going to take those lessons learned around becoming an e-commerce site. We're going to plow those into our attractions business, which is now moving and growing like gangbusters. But on the hotel side, not the tremendous success we had hoped it to be, and we're gonna pivot. We're gonna move on. So what are we moving to? I'm not going to talk too much about future trends because this was more about process for me. 3 themes on that I think we will hear a lot more about coming up over the next couple of days. We're going to hear a lot more about AR and visualization. So Tripadvisor has the world's largest collection of photos about a hotel, both traveler generated as well as sourced through professional sources. We own a company called Oyster that goes around and takes professionally sourced photos through the eyes of the user. How do we take all of that content and that data and we help people visualize that in an immersive way so they understand what it's really like to be in destination before they get there? Clearly a point of investment for the business. Having the world's largest set of data is only good if people actually go through it. And 18 years ago, the notion of being able to read a couple of hundred reviews about a hotel where there was no other available workaround to figure out what it was really like to stay at that hotel was novel, and people were much more willing to spend that time. Nowadays, people can go to Twitter and say, what's the Biltmore like? And their friends and their followers will answer the question. The Biltmore will probably come in and answer any questions that they can. So taking the knowledge and the data that we have and making it more assistive and predictive through machine learning is another area of investment for the business. The data is only good if it can be churned into insight. And if people aren't willing to spend the time to do that, we have to help them. And then related to that is personalization. So categorization has been a very common theme. And by categorization, I mean there are people that are put into cohorts in real time using algorithms. So I have never stayed in the Biltmore before today, but maybe some of you have. If I was shopping on Tripadvisor and I was friends with you or we were connected and I was like you, then I would be put into that category and personalization could happen. We're going to take that one step further, and we're going to move into into true personalization. What do we know about you? Matthew, who's a homer, right? We heard that earlier in the day. He lives 4 houses down from his parents and went to school in Massachusetts. And so that level of kind of deep personalization is going to be leveraged to help travelers find and pick the best hotel for them. All right, so in summary and closing, important to observe your customers and understand them. Research is key, and this is something that you should be leveraging a team of professionals, either internally or externally, to do. From that, generate a customer map that is leveraged across planning activities, both top and bottom and cross-functionally. Fast iterative cycles help validate the plans that you've created as a result of your journey, and transparency is key, so everyone's on the same page. And I think that's all I have for you today, so thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew. That was a round of applause for Matthew. That's amazing, Matthew. You can have
thank you very much. Questions?
Yes, please. So I won't take much of your time before the audience have some questions. But from a hotel industry to a non-hotel attraction industry, what are your visions going forward in terms of changing the strategy to attract the customer experience and everything?
Yeah, so I think TripAdvisor is a two-sided marketplace, right? So in order to answer that question, it's important to answer it from both sides of the marketplace. At the end of the day, that demand side, how customers want to find, book, and have the very best trip, I don't think has fundamentally changed. The way they're doing it is changing. So the lessons learned that from our instant book, as an example, are very immediately applicable to the transaction side of the attractions business. I think the supply side is the one that I'm not sure how much has direct correlation. If anything, the attraction side, you could make the cases a little bit simpler. With hotel, you've got distribution has resulted in inventory being everywhere, and big players exerting leverage over one another to keep supply in more close to home. So I'm thinking of Hilton in particular.
Yes.
The attraction space, I don't see that there's those big players that are fundamentally moving the business one way or the other, which is one. And then two, we also have the advantage of owning the biggest online source of attractions in our Viator business. So I think the strategy could, I mean, I don't want to sound silly here, but I think the strategy is kind of the same. It's taking that strategy and putting it into a different set of business conditions that is going to be the difference maker.
Thank you. Before I let the audience have any questions, you brought in about the MVP, the minimum viable product. Have you heard about the buzzword, the minimum viable experience? How we can build, run, and test products before it goes to customers. Have you come across a...
Yeah, I mean, I think, so yes, and those kinds of synonyms for that notion of go fast and build minimally that I've seen come up have really been a result of folks like me on the product side valuing the M in the MVP much more than the V in the MVP. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a situation where if you're building a crappy experience or a crappy feature or a crappy product,
and you learn from it.
What have you really learned? You've gathered data, but you haven't generated any insights or learning. So I think the way that we combat that against that and guard against that at Tripadvisor is co-creation with customers. When the feature or the product or the idea is beginning to move through that design and development process, we'll have customers giving their feedback right on it. And we do that with a research team that's independent from the product team, which at first, I'll be honest, I was not pleased with, but have grown to love because I can now I've come to grips that as a product owner, I have a bias. I want it to work. It's my idea, right? So of course it's going to work. And having an independent arbiter of the facts of what the user is saying helps ground me and do that course correction. So, yeah, I think you can learn what your MVP is by the process of iteration as well. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to
successful all the time.
Yeah, it's the right mix, and it's totally dependent on the type of experience that you're building. So for us, a checkout product with Instant Book, you can make very small increments, very small changes. With the product that you're working on, the connected room, I got to figure that there's probably a lot more that goes into the definition of minimum in order to make that a viable product.
A lot of challenges there. Thank you. Any questions from audience, please?
That framework you spoke about, I was just wondering to what extent you have their attention.
Yeah, every day, multiple times a day. So Steve, our CEO, is our founder, and he's hyper involved in the business. So Steve's, he's right across the hall. I think that's a case of having a founder who's still with the company, so not something that could be as instantly translatable to other businesses that don't have that. So what we have done that works really well is a steering committee that meets once a week. Each business unit has a leadership team, head of product, head of engineering, head of sales, and connect minimum once a week.
Sorry, I just saw you put up the Emily Daly Group of Hospitality. I don't know if you might. Okay. Just in case. So you have a great product in that you have people who run the entire sales funnel from the hotel and service side, but how do you prevent the drop off where people might come in and shop and they might even go to that business
It's a real challenge, and probably don't have time to go through all the details, but there is a lot of the TripAdvisor experience that is inherently confusing. Like, I'm booking the Marriott on TripAdvisor, powered by Priceline. Like, it took a long time for the audience to really understand what that customer experience looks like, and who's responsible for what, who's done what to whom in order to generate that experience. So the short answer is that we do have to live in and embrace a set of conditions that are uncertain. Oftentimes when we were getting feedback on instant booking, we were talking to customers who had actually used our meta-search click-off product and just didn't understand that they had clicked off and they were already on a different website. One thing that we have done tactically that helps us with that is that we've syndicated our review collection processes to all of those hotels. So we do have a way that TripAdvisor as a brand is going back to users after the stay to collect reviews. That's a little bit more focused on the business itself, the hotel itself, but it does enable us to connect and generate learnings across the overall experience. And that Review Express product is great. Hotels love it, and we get a lot of information that way.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Matthew.
it.
Thank you so much.